Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are at pedalshift.net/134, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or call the voicemail hotline 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out also on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody. This is Tim Mooney back for the final edition of Pedalshift Tour Journals, Volume 11, Oregon Coast Loop. This is the Epilogue, the 4th edition. So we've been doing this for 4 weeks now, and, well, actually a little bit less than that. I don't know what it was about this one. I think the Katy Trail one was much longer. This one is a little bit shorter. I think that the tours were about the same length, but there was something about this that the pieces fit together in longer episodes. So that's just how it all worked out. I've got videos coming. I was focused so much on the audio. I still have yet to really get the videos together. I'm hoping to do that before too late in the month of September. I really would like to get you to see the visuals, because in some ways I feel like that I did more on the video side of things than on the audio side of things. So I'm kind of excited to dig in and get that all out to you. On this edition, we are going to spend a little bit of time kind of looking back on the Oregon Coast Loop tour, and I have 10 takeaways that I have from it. And I think that I'm still sort of processing it. It's been a few weeks since I got back, but I'm still sort of there in a lot of ways, which in some ways is good. I don't think that this trip is over in my head quite yet, which is weird, because you would think the Oregon coast is a place I've been to time after time. Other than the CNO, I think it's probably the stretch of bicycling route that I know better than any other in the world. But for some reason, this one just sort of stuck with me a little bit. And maybe it was because of the unusual nature of it, the fact that I did northbound for a little bit of it, or Nobo, as I'll say, or I said, we'll continue to say, whatever. In any event, I am still sort of processing a little bit, but I do have the 10 takeaways for this episode, and that'll kind of serve as a coda to tie a ribbon around all of this. So let's jump right in. Number 10, I guess we'll do this, and these are in no order whatsoever. So number 10, dude, don't rush. As prepared as I think I am, I always rush when I travel. I always am in this weird last second thing. I'm big on making lists. I'm big on packing days in advance even, but sometimes you don't pack everything and you got to pack things later. And, just with getting the bike in the bag and things like this, I ended up totally rushed. I had a variety of things that always end up rushing me in the very end. And when I rush, I screw things up. I forget things. And I forgot my rain jacket. In fact, I'm looking over at it right now as I record this. It has not moved in weeks. It's exactly where it was when I was packing for this trip, and it has not moved as it sat here in DC the whole time that I was in Oregon. I could have used it. It's a great jacket. It's a great windbreaker. It's great for dealing with fog and all that other kind of stuff. Could have used it. Wasn't, awful. I coped, but it wasn't ideal. And so this comes back to, dude, don't rush. I'm always rushing at the end, and I need to not do that. So don't rush. That's number 10. Number 9, takeaway. Keep tinkering, my friends. Your gear is never perfect, and neither is your setup. This trip, I experimented with a new mirror setup, and I talked about that. It kind of came off of my front rack a little bit. It was an absolute A+. I loved every second of it until, of course, when it came off because I didn't have it secured right. So A+ in idea, B- in execution. So, the slimmer backpacking style pack job was another area. Both were huge improvements. And I really think that I'm going to take that for future tours as well. I may not do it for every tour. In fact, the next one, I'm probably going to bring Bellstar on the CNO, and I got to pack heavy for that. So I won't be able to do this style, but I'm going to be informed by it, and I'm going to be informed by it for all future tours as well. So keep tinkering. Everything is a constant evolution. You should never feel satisfied with what you're doing, because you're always going to have an opportunity to improve things. Number 8, Oregon has great coastal transit. The buses don't come often, but they link together really, really nicely. And, if you dip inland to the Willamette Valley, if you're further north, you've got Amtrak as a bonus. And all of these buses sort of link together to get you to the Amtrak, to get you to each other. There's tons of fast forward options. So whether you are going to be on the coast itself, or you've got some other Oregon itinerary involved, or you're in Portland and want to do a piece of the coast, but can't do it all, consider using the transit systems because they really do work really well. This Oregon Loop, this whole experiment was a great success because those transit systems work in a way that makes sense for bike touring. The one thing that I'll say as a caveat is, in a sense, I got a little lucky because if I ever hit a bus that already had full bike racks, I would have been a little hosed in some ways because the lack of service on some of these buses means that if I only had one option to make linkages all the way north or south or whichever direction you're going, if you miss one of those things and you were banking on being able to make all of the connections in succession, you're a little hosed. So you do want to make sure that you understand that it's possible that you might not be able to grab a bus. I had that happen to me once in California. One of the recent tours, I was kind of in a place, I think it was in Eureka. I was like, you know what? I just want to do a fast forward. And I was waiting for the bus and it came and it was full. There were 2 bikes in the bike rack and there was no way to get on there. So I ended up riding. I ended up not doing the fast forward and I rode the few hours that I had left. It worked out fine, but it's funny. One of those things when you have it in your head that you're about to take a ride and then you can't, it's not so good. So anyways, Oregon, great coastal transit. Be ready in case you can't make it. Number 7. I'm in the market for a new North Bend / Coos Bay area campground. Sunset Bay is fine. I whined about it a little bit on the tour journal. I'll be honest. I think I called it garbage. I feel like that I owe it a little bit of an apology. But it's just not as good. And I think I go back to the keep tinkering my friends idea here, that I think that there might be a better option that I have not looked at because I'm just been so used to going to Sunset Bay. I think that it's one of those places that I've had okay experiences, and I've had some great experiences, but the okay experiences have been more frequent lately, and it doesn't look like it's trending in the right direction. So I'm in the market for a new campground. I may be looking for one, and I'll keep you posted on all that. Next one, mid-morning breakfasts for the win. As someone who, as you probably remember, skips breakfast when I'm off the bike, I do intermittent fasting and all that other kind of garbage. This seems to be the best fit for me when I am eating full meals, 3 squares, 4 squares, 5 squares a day when I'm on a bike tour. For me, and this is all for me, I don't dawdle in camp. I grab a bar. I grab a caffeine pill if I'm not making coffee. Again, this is all me here. Your mileage may vary. Your desires may vary. But I like to get that first 10 to 20 miles in with a little bit in my system, very light and lean going in, and then stop. If there's a town, for instance, that's a really great option for me to stop and get something bigger, whether it's a breakfast or an early lunch. Man, what a difference it makes just in terms of my energetics for the day. It works out really well. So 10 to 20 miles, I don't know what it is. Maybe it just gets my metabolism going. I just get into it a little bit better. My appetite's a little bit more in match with what my caloric needs are. Whatever it is, mid-morning breakfast, I'm all in on it. I'm going to keep doing that. Next one up is Ride Your Ride. I've lost track of the numbers here, but trust me, there's 10. Next one up is Ride Your Ride. It's hard not to compare yourself to other people. It is so hard. I do it every freaking trip I go on. Not like I'm such a stronger rider. None of that. It's usually quite the opposite. There was one guy who pulled a Century Plus ride day on a completely loaded bike coming into one of the camps. And it just got me thinking, I'm a weak rider. I'm not so good at this. I'm old. God forbid I said that, right? But you know what? Hey, I planned the trip with the mileage spacing that I planned. I did exactly what I wanted to do. I like stopping and taking dumb videos, which I hope to share with you. And I like to see things, and I like to do it all kind of within my own head at my own pace based on the energetics of the day. So yeah, ride your own ride. I mean, that's for me. That other guy, he was actually going to be meeting people in California, further south, down like in Arcata or something like that. So he needed to bang out a bunch of miles. I'm sure he wasn't exactly into necessarily doing 100 plus miles. Maybe he was, but he had a reason for doing it, and he was riding his own ride. So if that's what you got to do, you do that. If you've got to do a ride more like what I was talking about, do that. If you want to do less, do that too. Ride your own ride. Don't compare yourself to other people. It's not worth it because you're doing your own things. You might learn a thing or two from other people, but don't feel compelled to feel badly about yourself because of how you are versus someone else, whether it's me or someone else on the ride. Ride your own ride. Next up is a fast forward tip. Bring a giant duffel bag. And I'm talking like a really big one that can hold all of your gear, whether it's in bags or not, and has a big long zipper to it and a big long shoulder strap. It is an indispensable part of fast forwarding with bike tours for me. What I do with mine is, mine is like some canvas thing. It's not waterproof. It's not very special. I think it was less than $20. I mean, it might have even been closer to 10, but it folds up, rolls up really small and flat. I put it on my rear rack and then I put stuff on top of it. When I get to a fast forward point, it's usually buses, but occasionally it's trains or even ferries. I unhook everything off of the bike. I throw it all, bag and all, pannier and all, into that duffel bag and zip it up, and boom. I've got two things to deal with right then. I've got a shoulder bag, basically a giant, and trust me, it's heavy and it's unwieldy, but at least it fits over my shoulder and I can walk around with it. And then I got the bike, and the bike is so much easier when there's nothing on it. And if you're in a situation where you have to hook your bike onto a bike rack, it is so much easier to just be ready and have everything all together. And then all you have to do is jump on the bus in one fell swoop. Time after time, and this was me in previous encounters with buses and fast forwards, it's going back and forth and bringing in things two at a time until you finally get all your stuff inside. It just doesn't feel right. You feel rushed, going back to don't be rushed. And it's not very organized, and you risk maybe leaving something behind, or worse, something gets pinched. It's nice to have everything in one spot. It's also good for, the end and the beginning of the trips. I mean, this was the same bag that I checked with all of my gear in it when I flew out. I had a bike bag for the bike, and I had this duffel for all my other stuff that I checked under the plane. Boom. It's really easy. It's really inexpensive, and it's my best tip for you for your fast forwards, the giant duffel bag. Next up, this is a bus tip when you're riding with a touring bike. Now, touring bikes are, they're just all sorts of different flavors. Your frame might be a little bit longer. You might have a front rack like I do, or you have fenders that are enormous, or any kind of a combination where it doesn't quite fit in those one-size-fits-all bike racks in front of buses. This is something that I've run into before. There's a spring-loaded arm that is supposed to come up and over and be on top of your front wheel. And with touring bikes, because of all those varieties of possibilities of things, sometimes they don't fit. Now, if you're on a more of a traditional road bike or a traditionally sized bike, this may not be an issue for you. But for those of you like me who has a bike that doesn't quite fit in there, let me give you a piece of advice that I adopted from multiple drivers on the Oregon coast. The first one out of Portland, he said, "Do you have a U-lock?" And he suggested that I U-lock the spring arm to the wheel and to the bike itself. And that just holds it in place. Because what happens is that you go on a few bumps, and if it's not really fully and firmly in place, and it's only kind of maybe up about 3/4 of the way or 70% of the way, it's going to slip off, and then all of a sudden that bike can fly off of the thing. So what he suggested is you lock the tensioner arm to the front wheel, and then even bungee the rear side of the bike down to the bottom of the rack. So have a couple of bungees as well. Now, not all of the buses on the Oregon coast had a kind of loop on the tensioner arm that you could U-lock through, but it was very easy to bungee things together that way in addition to the U-lock. In any event, it gave so much more peace of mind to me. And that's because I think that for some reason, I always thought that bus drivers were not digging you locking or putting things in addition to the tension arms and stuff like that. I've actually had a bike fall off of a bus here in the DC area going out towards the CNO before. And that is a disaster. It is scary. It was luckily in a residential neighborhood and was going around a 5 mile per hour curve on a residential street. So there was no damage, but enough of a freak out. Do this, and maybe even do it when you're commuting. Maybe if you're just doing city biking with buses, it just gives you that extra little peace of mind and secures the bike down. So you lock or bungee your bike down in addition to that spring-loaded arm. Worked really well. Loved it. Let's see. This must be number 9 or number 2. We'll call it number 2. I think we were going backwards. Number 2. Don't stress the headwinds. I listen to these podcasts just like you do, and I notice that I have a thing for mentioning if there is even the slightest babyest headwind in the moment. I think that it's kind of powerful to hear yourself and what your thoughts are after the fact, because it's clear that it gets in my head a little bit. And what I've been realizing more, especially on this trip, is, you know what, they're always there. They're like hills. You can't change them. You can't move them. They're going to be there. And you just have to sort of roll with it. And I mean, I know that Brock came up. I don't know if Brock claimed this or if he heard it and repeated it, but the first person I ever heard use this practice from the Sprocket podcast said that headwinds are invisible hills. And that's just the way to look at them. I had a lot of headwinds on this trip. You heard about them a lot. I talked about them ad nauseum. Now, they were there. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't imagining them. But it's one of those things that's just sort of like, you know what? You don't have to think about it all the time. Yeah, maybe they're there. Maybe you were sort of hoping them to be all tailwind, but you know what? It's fine. Winds move, winds shift. There's a such thing as predominant winds, but then every once in a while they're going to whip around and they're going to come at you. So you know what? Don't stress them. There are going to be days when you're going to have awful headwinds, and yes, you should complain about them then, but not every day. Not like me. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. Don't be me. Number 1, be in the moment. Too often I found myself thinking about what was ahead. Sometimes things that were days in advance, and I wasn't focused or enjoying what was in front of me right in that moment. Sometimes I had these incredible vistas and I was thinking about, oh, I got to catch this bus in 2 days. And I'm glad that when that happened, and it happened more than once, I was self-aware enough to shake myself out of it. And turn and enjoy that moment and really take some time to just simply be in that spot. One of the things about bicycle touring is you are focused on a destination kind of constantly. You've got a destination for the end of the day. You've got a larger destination for the end of your trip. You're always looking for that summit of the mountain. But the reality is, this is a cliche, but you know, the journey is really the whole reason, not the destination. I think that's the cliche. It's close. Anyways, the stuff ahead is always going to be there, and you can deal with it when it's in that moment in front of you. When you're on a bike tour, savor what's in front of you in the moment, because as soon as you start pedaling away from it, it's behind you, and you're not going to get a chance to see it unless you turn around and do a loop like I did. But that's besides the point. You know, be in the moment and savor what you've got in front of you, because sometimes it's so fast, these tours. You can be saving up vacation days or maneuvering your clients and, you know, getting this 1 week that you get a chance to, that you've been looking forward to for so long. And so often, poof, it's gone. And I really do think that in some ways, part of that is the psychology of always just looking ahead. And I'm trying as much as I can for myself. And this is the last point that I'm imploring to you as part of the takeaways here, to be in the moment for whatever it is that you're doing. Because, you know, I've done the Oregon coast a bunch of times, but that trip only happened once. And that's why it's kind of nice to make sure that every single time you're there, even if it's the one and only time you'll ever be there, that you take that moment and kind of bank it away in your memory bank. Take some pictures, do whatever else you need to do too, but be in the moment and, you know, smell the air and listen to the birds and the sea lions and the cars or whatever it is that's around you in that moment. and savor it and enjoy it, because that moment, that's the whole reason why we bike tour. We like to end off the show, as always, with a big thank you to the supporters of the show who are members of the Pedalshift Society. If you like what you hear, you can help maintain Pedalshift as an independent, listener-supported voice while expanding the offerings. We're talking $1, $2, $5 a month. Helps with the cost of hosting the podcast and the website. You can do it for a bit and cancel anytime. One-shot support is welcome as well. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Ethan Georgie, Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Josiah Matthews, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Seth Krieger, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, John Sikorsky, Richard Killian, Chris Barron, Brian Wren, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Paul Mulvey, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Nathan Poulton, Harry Hugel, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Ruth Divorcey, Michelle Miller, Matthew Lewis, Michael Baker, Billy Crafton, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Matt Perry, Danielle Jepson, Cody Florchinger, Tom Beninati, Bobby Ruppel, Roy Everett, Greg Braithwaite, John Mayer, William Cairns, Sandy Pizzio, Richard Patch, Mark Messer, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Dave Roll, Joseph Quinn, John Baxter, and Susan Brewster. And thanks also to all past contributors and anonymous contributors for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.